All right. Welcome, everybody. This is episode 12 of the Mean Joe Happy Hour Huddle, starring Stephanie Keogh, Bradley Simon, Anthony Taylor, DJ Renob, Mike Bloomstein. And that's it. We are the guests this week. And we have a topic that is very near and dear to our heart. And I've been known to talk about it, and I'll introduce that in a little bit here. But first, let's welcome everybody and let you know that let's put questions down in the comments, and we'll be happy to talk about them, answer those questions. Let us know if you're here. We'd like to say hi back. And before we get started talking about this week's topic, let's get to everybody's favorite part of the huddle, the happy hour part, and see what everybody's drinking. Stephanie, what do you got?
Okay, I'm keeping it real classy today. I've got some cheap old barefoot wine.
Nice.
And drinking it out of the mason jar.
Ooh, nice.
On the rocks too, huh?
Yeah, it was fresh out of the closet.
The old wine closet.
Bradley, what do you got over there?
Just going with some water today.
No water, okay. Hydration. It's a hot one out. Anthony? I already know the answer, but I'm asking you anyway.
The glass of Jameson from good friends down in Cincinnati at Everlasting Event Planning.
Oh, shameless plug. There you go. And
we got paid for this wedding.
And Mike?
Pottsville, PA's finest. We got the Yang.
There you go.
Augusta National. Come on now.
Nice. I have a little Ciroc that is so cold in our freezer here at the office that it stuck to my hand with some organic sweetened black tea, Zevia style. So, cheers.
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 All right, so I skimmed over a topic. The topic near and dear to our heart, as I mentioned, and I feel like I say this in almost every meeting we ever have with partners, potential partners, is that every partner that Mean Joe Advertising works with now or has ever worked with in the 8+ years of being in existence are really they're advertising because they need an actual result. They need something to happen to show that advertising worked. And we don't have any partners, nor have we to this point, although we'd love to, have anyone who's just in it for branding and awareness. The example I always give is like the National Dairy Farmers Association. They roll out they used to at least roll out that Got Milk campaign for many years, every year. And imagine the ad agency for that just had to execute good media buys and get it out there for awareness. There wasn't a lot of measuring of success other than if they did any type of focus groups to try to see if they were making the impact they wanted to awareness wise. So, but everyone we work with needs results. They need return on investment, and every business is different. What does that even mean? What are results? How can you know? Isn't it just spend money on advertising, and if sales go up or you make more money, then it worked? So we've had a lot of different conversations with a lot of people, and so we're gonna talk about that today, because if you're a business out there that advertises and is frustrated not knowing whether it works or not, if you are a business out there who is considering advertising and you're not sure what you're going to do to determine whether it was worth it or not, if you're a business that looks at advertising as an expense and you're frustrated and you're angry and you're mad that it's something you spend money on, maybe what we're going to talk about today will help you look at it more the way we do, and the way that I believe that we've impacted a lot of our partners to look at it, which is as more of an investment. And like any investment, it should pay dividends. It should give you a return on that investment. So that's it. That's what we're going to talk about.
Well, and I think it's kind of interesting if you look at it in almost like the three buckets of of marketing. I mean, you've got creative, you've got the medium, so whether it be digital or radio, TV, and then you've got the tracking part of it. And we've got all three of those pieces represented here today, oddly enough. And I guess we can start with that creative conversation of, how do we, what are some of the things that have worked, that we've seen work, from the creative end, whether it be TV, radio, to help give that trackability to an advertising part.
It's pretty early. This is pretty early in the conversation to say that it's not always what you do, but it's how you do it. I mean, that's obviously a big part of it. And the creative and the strategy, the media strategy or whatever, go hand in hand. So that I could tell you.
I think one of the things that people always struggle with is if they're going to ask the customer, where did you see us? The customer says, I saw you on TV, or, well, do you know what station it was? How many people pay attention to what station it was? So I think one of my favorite things early on for Northeast, and we still do it now for Northeast Factory Direct, is those long form segments by putting them with a specific person. So was the person a woman? Okay, then we know it was on this station. Was it a tall man? Then we know it was on that station. And that was a better way to differentiate, so they could pinpoint exactly how those dollars were returning to them.
Yeah, I mean, creative strategy wise, and I think that TV example is a really good example. There are things that you can do to make it very easy for the consumer, who we're not going to disparage too much out there, but I think we all know that you can't give everybody too much credit. The civilians out there to remember everything, but we can help them along a bit, and so that strategy tends to work on a number of levels. It's memorable, it's longer, there's a lot more information that you can get out during it than just in a normal 15 or 30-second commercial like a lot of people do when it's 2 minutes or 90 seconds or 3 minutes. Having the owner of the store be in the commercial is a strategy that has been going on for a long time. A lot of times that works. We have a number of people we work with who are now, and one in particular who's a local celebrity because seen on TV so much. So that helps. Having a personality from the TV station is not always the easiest thing in the world, but when you can pull that off, that gives you another kind of point of reference that a consumer might remember. So yeah, those are all really good things. With radio, I mean, a strategy that we utilize because we think that it provides a greater percentage of success happening. But in particular, when we're talking about a business, a product, a service that needs some type of explanation, it's not something that's that easily understood. Or it has a great story. It's a great local story. There are characters involved. There's owners who are brothers, or there's owners who are not related but who have been friends since they were kids, or somebody who started this small little business with teeny little classified ads and 20 years ago and selling stuff out of their garage. Like all of those things are creatively can be turned into a story that becomes memorable for people and helps them probably remember a little bit more where they heard something. But when you put that in on radio, when you put that on an endorser who is a trusted, a radio host who has a following, who's trusted, who has credibility with their listeners, who their listeners feel like they know them and are their friends. And I guess because we have a lot of time to talk today, we're not going to ask ourselves the ending questions. I'll use my mom as the example. My mom, who I think is a savvy consumer, and Mom, if you're watching, I apologize that I'm going to blow your cover on this, but somebody who I feel is a little bit more upscale and who is a shopper and kind of just doesn't pay attention to advertising because she's knows what she wants and knows where to get it and all that. Years ago, I was considering making a move to a radio station to be in sales. And when I eventually took the job at WTAM, I told my parents, like any good kid would do, that I was taking a new job. And my mom said, "Oh, you're going to be working with my friend Bill Wills." And I was like, "Mom, I know Bill Wills. I when I worked at WMMS all those years, like for a number of years, we were in the same building, and I've ridden the elevator and talked to Bill Wills, and I've sat at the same picnic table during a company picnic with Bill Wills, and like I know Bill Wills. How did I not know that you guys were friends?" And I'll just say this really quick: that years and years and years ago, my mom used to run, and she had a subscription to Runner's World magazine, and one day I came home and my mom was crying, and it was because her friend had died. And I said, "I've never even heard of that person." And it was like he was like the main guy from Runner's World magazine, and because she had read Runner's World magazine so much, she felt like she knew him, so she was sad. So that gives you a little kind of perspective on my mom. But basically, what she said is, "Oh my God, I listen to Bill Wills every morning, and he's so nice and he's so great, and that's the reason why I got my car at such and such dealership." And I thought, if my mom can be influenced that much by this style of advertising, then that works. And when I worked at WTAM, that's almost exclusively what I focused on when I needed to really deliver a result to an advertiser or business that I was working with. That followed me as we've worked at as we started Mean Joe Advertising, and as we work with more and more partners. When they have a story to tell, when they have something that needs to be explained, when we really need to have a measurable result, one of the ways on radio, on top of reaching the right people the right number of times with the right message, is having an endorser can really help trackability, because a lot of these listeners are fans. They are customers of that radio station, and they are customers and fans of the personalities. And so if Bill Wills or Tony Rizzo or Mike Trevisano or Dustin Fox or many of these, Sarah Carnes, and now I feel bad because I'm not naming everyone, but everybody kind of gets the point. But all of these great endorsers that we work with, when they tell their listeners, their followers, "Hey, this is my guy, these are my guys, this is my person, I trust them, I got my this or that or the other there, and I think you'll have a great experience too." Not only does it work, but also the consumer, when asked, usually can reference back to that more easily than trying to remember what radio station they heard an ad with an announcer on. So that was
and I think that just to back that or drive that point home even more, I mean, in 2017, the Radio Advertising Bureau released a study that said 55% of their respondents selected a medical service based off of the recommendation of their favorite radio host. So if people are trusting their health based on the recommendations of a radio host, think about something like furniture, auto, all these different categories that can apply to. And I think, Todd, something that you've kind of instilled in the copywriting at Mean Joe is providing that invitation for someone to do something. I tend to use the term Bubba's. You got to tell Bubba what to do sometimes. But that invitation, just saying your name 15 times, is branding. But inviting them to come to X store and get Y, and right now you can get, I think it's the peanuts teacher is what you talk about a lot of times at the offer, but that CTA, call to action, if you will, of
there it is.
Come here, buy that, helps not only drive action, but also becomes that tracking mechanism of Bill Wills told me to come in and buy my car from X Auto Deal.
Yeah. I left out one of the other reasons why I thought using an endorser was good. And even though this isn't about using endorsers, I figured I would throw it in. So I mentioned if you have a great story, I mentioned if you have something that needs to be explained. But another one that we always kind of apply this to is when you have something where there needs to be some trust established. And we all know trust is earned. And it's very difficult for a business, a product, or a service to gain trust by a commercial. And so using an endorser is another way to do that. I feel like that was implied in what we were talking about, but I wanted to throw that in there. And so anyway, yeah.
No, that's a good point. And kind of going back to that call to action, I mean, all of the stuff we've talked about so far is, that content has been pretty targeted into who, like, we're going to find out where these customers are coming from. But actually with that call to action that Anthony was talking about is you can customize that as well. And I mean, it might be obvious, but you can have a customized URL. You can have a customized phone number for each station. I mean, we've done that before so that you can, recognize where people are coming from there. And that can be really customized. I mean, even to, like the time of day.
Yeah. In many meetings as a media salesperson and also as the advertising agency guy, I've heard people talk about how they've done advertising and it quote unquote didn't work. And once again, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. If I would ask, what did you do? And then, do you have one of your old commercials? And I can't tell you how many times I've, did everyone drink? I can't tell you how many times I either saw their copy points or I had a script that they gave me or they actually had the MP3 and it was advertising to advertise. They didn't know that because they're not experts. And this is not a plug for working with us. Hire an expert. If you don't know what you're doing, if you're an expert in your business, but not in advertising and marketing, get somebody to help you with that. The salesperson from the media company is not always truly an expert in advertising and marketing, even if they are of their station. So yeah, you can't just roll out glamour photos or a glamour video and not invite anyone to do anything and expect them to do something. It doesn't always have to be this is free or that's $25 off or 25% off, but there needs to, at the very least, be some invitation to do something. And absolutely, Mike. And it's funny that you brought up just the attribution via other avenues other than just asking, which was the kind of the first thing we talked about. But I saw Anthony smirk a little bit, so I'll let him talk, and it'll be timely a little bit about call tracking numbers. But yeah, I mean, being able to look at your back end information and metrics, or having somebody who can do that for you. Having the URL, having people go to a landing page, those are all things that are measurable. And even if your ultimate goal is sales or leads or ups or whatever it is, you can track those in your way, but then you can also have a double check that way by looking at things like Google Analytics and all of the different information you can get about clicks and clicking through and time spent and how many pages visited and more things that we'll let Anthony talk about.
Well, yeah, Mike, you weren't a part of the conversation today, but you definitely teed me up for this. And we've talked at Mean Joe about how effective are call tracking numbers. If you're in a car, how often are you going to pull over to the side of the road, write down a number? Even on TV, if you have a vanity URL, how frequently is somebody going to write down Mean Joe Advertising / get a free quote? Or even if it's a promo code. I know HelloFresh has been running Hulu 60 on their OTT ads for months. How often are people remembering Hulu 60 except for the nerds who are in advertising and think that's kind of cool. But with the call tracking numbers before, what we were finding is that you were getting like 10% attribution, whether you had a vanity URL or a call tracking number. So that's 90% of the traffic and the ROI that's generated from that campaign that you're not attributing to that. So it was kind of one of those, it's good information, but you can't have that be the be all end all. Now, since what I've heard of other people refer to as the virus, since that, what we've found is it's actually 80% of people are calling the call tracking number or going to that main URL. And the theory that we have behind this, I don't have hard data to back this up yet, but the theory being that if you think about radio in particular, when people are hearing that ad, or we're hearing that ad, they're in the car, they get to work, they get to their desk and they think, oh, what was that? I needed to get new tires on my car. And they were talking about that. Oh, it was XXX auto service or whatever it might be. And then they Google it and then they click on it and that goes to organic search traffic, right? But now what people are doing, they're working from home. So they're either have the radio on at home or they're on a streaming service and listening, and they hear it and there's a pad of paper sitting right next to them because they're at work. They write down the number or they type it into their phone real quick and call up. So I think right now we're seeing consumer behaviors change, and it's allowing us to have this better attribution model using call tracking numbers and banned URLs. And the only comment I would make in general to that is, even still, we know and recognize that yes, a larger portion of the population is using it, but that can't be your be all end all. That you're still going to get people who Google your name or just call in to your normal business line. So you can't give 100% credit to that, but if you aren't employing call tracking, there's tons of awesome services out there. Two that come to mind that are really strong: CallRail and Call Tracking Metrics are both really good platforms that I would recommend for any business to check out if they're interested in that.
Is that free, or did they give you some?
So Anthony, do you see over the next 6 months, the rest of the year, do you see that number continue to stay at that 80-20 mark? And then if, say January 1st, people start to more work in the office, do you think that's going to switch right back? Or do you think that people are changing their habits and their ways of thinking and responding to advertisements?
So I think we're going to see it remain as long as the majority of the population is working from home. I say that, but certainly what I've learned is that you can expect a lot from the population, and then they're going to give you an entirely different result, and you just have to be willing to switch to that. So, and that goes along with tracking, attribution, and creative, and any topic of marketing. But my assumption will be that we will continue to see this trend. But as soon as we see a shift in that, I think that being able to adjust on the fly and build out those really fancy attribution models again is going to be just as popular.
So in thinking about this topic, we've really jumped way ahead of a lot of things that are maybe basic to the whole thing that some people who are in business might want to think about when they're trying to figure this out. And that is what is ROI? What should mine be? What goes into factoring exactly, what makes up the investment? Is the investment just how much I spend on advertising? If I spend $10,000 on advertising and people buy $10,000 worth of stuff and say that they bought it because of the advertising, that I break even? There's a lot of, was that good? Was that successful? Was that positive? Did I get a result or a return on investment? So let's talk a little bit about what goes into it. And it's different for every single business. And then another part of that, number two is, I think, what is it that people are trying to measure? Is it ultimately sales, or is it leads or opportunity, or is it Number of phone calls, like everybody might have their own metric, number of people through the store traffic. So let's talk about that. We can just start throwing out what are some things that you should be including in your number that you're going to try to use to figure out if something worked. Cost of advertising.
Right. I would first, even just go to the difference between return on ad spend and ROI. They tend to get confused quite often. So return on ad spend is simply the equation of the amount, the revenue gained from advertising divided by what you spent on advertising times 100. ROI is all of your costs. So, total cost of the advertising. You can calculate overhead. You could calculate sales. Sales commission. You could calculate
cost of the goods.
Exactly. Yeah. All of that goes into calculating an ROI. So, in addition to having a good marketing department, you now have a really good CPA. Yeah, knowing the difference between the two is really important. But it's anything that goes into business, I think, should be a part of that ROI equation.
Here's a question I have that's kind of trivial, but I'm just curious. Some people call the return on ad spend ROAS, and some people just call it RAS. Which one is correct? I'm not going to tell you. Okay, potato. Okay.
Is this a scene from Black Sheep? ROAS. Weird word.
And a part of ROI also should be the production cost of the ad, by the way. Want to include that, which can be amortized over however long you use that ad. But Todd, a question I feel like you usually give a really good response to when we're having conversations with partners is, well, what should my ROI be? And I hopefully put you in a good position there because I've heard you give really good responses to that.
So once again, not to be whatever the word is for not directly answering the question or answering with a question, but normally the question is like, trying to figure out what they need it to be, because there's not just one answer for it. In 8+ years of working with our partners who, when you're in this role that we're in right now as the advertising agency, the consultant, if you will, the advertising helper / expert, et cetera, you get a lot more information than back in the days when I was a media salesperson, where the advertiser doesn't want to tell you anything. And I feel like, a lot more information, the more we can get, the more we can help. It's another thing that I probably say too much, but the more we know, the more we can do to change the outcome before it's too late. But return on investment or return on ad spend are both things where it's going to be different for every single industry. We work with some partners who have no real cost of goods. We have some where there's a big cost of goods, and so they're going to have completely different return on investment criteria. But interestingly enough, at one point we had multiple partners that I was talking to all the time, and without really getting down into the nitty gritty and getting super granular and trying to do really crazy math, it was just kind of like the upgrade down there. It was just kind of like 4-to-1 return on investment would be good. So for me, it was kind of like when we would get information that said that, and I'm using the easy math again, that $40,000 in sales came from a particular media source or advertising source that we were responsible for, and they spent $10,000 on it, then I was usually like, okay, that's enough right now for me to know that is working. And so sometimes decisions would be made based off of just basically that, without having any more real, intellectual, kind of analysis. And it would continue to work. So, and then when we were working under that premise, and then you would have something, an advertising source that would be delivering a 10-to-1 return on investment, then you thought, okay, we need to do more of that. Or, 8-to-1, wow, that's great. Or if some particular advertising source was delivering a 4-to-1, and then all of a sudden it started to be 6 or 8-to-1, and maybe it was because of a change you made, then you felt like, okay, we just made the really good change. And so that's all very general and not a great specific answer, but it is going to be dependent. I mean, if you have a business where you make a 40% profit margin on your widgets that you sell, right? And now I'm bad at math. I don't even really know where to go with this story. But if you make 40% on what it is you're selling, and then so that kind of, now you figured out your cost of that good, then you have to come up with how much you spend on advertising, and then what else do you want to include in that? And if when all is said and done, you made 15% because everything else was eaten up, is that good enough? Is that kind of where you should be?
And a follow-up to that, Todd, and I think that was a really good answer, because it gets people to think in that mindset. But there have also been partners we work with that'll come back and say, well, I need my advertising to revenue ratio or 5% needs to be my advertising. What are thoughts on that from the advertising agency perspective?
Call another ad agency. No, I'm just joking. We will work with everybody. Well, no, but honestly, that's to me, some people have, resources through whatever industry that they operate within, where that industry says, hey, best practice, or here's what the best of the best are doing, or operating at a 10% or a 15% advertising to sales ratio, right?
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So, and then others say, oh, okay, if that's what that becomes their goal. Okay, that's the industry standard. I'm going for that. And some people will really look at it, and we have at least one in particular who, that's how he figures out what his advertising budget is by he comes up with his sales goal. And if his sales goal is going to be $1 million for a month, then he knows that he knows that his industry standard is 10%. Then he's going to spend $100,000 in a month to get to that $1 million in sales. And it's a formula. It's not foolproof. I say this a lot also, nothing is guaranteed, but if you do the what the right way and not just the how, and you do the how the right way and not just the what, and things work the way that they're supposed to, and you reach the right people the right number of times with the right message, and yada yada yada, then that works. But not everybody is comfortable doing that. Some people will look at that industry standard number and say, well, I'm going, even if it's 10, I'm going at 4. And so, that's everyone's right as a business person. If they are more comfortable growing at a slower pace and they want to keep it there because it means that they have more, money in their own pocket as the owner of the business, and then that's okay. But it's the difference between somebody who plays the stock market, and I hate to compare gambling and playing the stock market to advertising, but there is a little bit of a correlation, I guess, in that, and I'm going to get to my Yankees thing here in a minute, but the less you gamble with, the less you are going to win, and the more you gamble with, the more you have a chance to win. Now, in cards and all of that, the odds are against you, and you have zero control over it all, other than a minor decision here or there, which might help, but isn't guaranteed to help. Anthony, right? We had a lot of conversations about this back in February, and sometimes, hitting on 16 against the 2 is the wrong move. But every once in a while, some dope who maybe had a little bit too much to drink or who didn't listen to his mentor pulls a 4, and ends up winning. But anyway, so but in advertising, you have control. You have control over your choices of your where you reach people, what you tell them, how many times you tell them, and what strategy you use to try to be able to track that. What creative, there's many things you can do, and so you have some control, and so higher percentage of a victory or a return or a result from that. And with that said, I do want to throw out my Yankees thing, and I hate to talk about the Yankees. I mean, here we are, a company called Mean Joe Advertising, named after or inspired by a hated weird player from the hated rival football team, and now I'm talking about the freaking Yankees, who I hate and was born and raised to hate. But for a long time, the Yankees were pretty much known for buying championships. They had the biggest payroll. They had the most money because of the way that baseball operates. And so there was a big pitcher coming up for free agency. Who was going to get him? The Yankees, unless it was somebody who was dying to go to the Angels because they wanted to play in warm weather. You could almost picture which guys were going to end up in pinstripes because they were going to go and get them at the trade deadline. Who always traded for the biggest banger, it would be the Yankees. And so what we started to find out in a few very specific instances with partners who were doing extremely well and who decided to double down. I feel like I do a little bit too much air quotes. Am I like some cheerleader or something like that? Anyway, but they will double down. They will, reinvest. They will go, crazy, whatever you want to call it. They're going for it, swinging for the fences. Huh?
Go shopping.
Yeah, exactly. They would, say, okay, well, let's, things are going well, let's do more. And what we found, and why I talk about the Yankees, it's like the Yankees. It's like buying your championship. You want to go from, instead of $1 million in sales for a month, you want to get to 1.5. Well, you got to spend, another $50,000 instead of just that 100. Or you want to get to $3 million. Well, it's going to be $300,000 to play that month. But the more we saw those kinds of things happen, the more we saw that revenue number, that sales number get there. With that said, it didn't always mean that the return on investment worked out exactly, because who knows, with some of that becomes some other factors that come into play on the cost of the goods and the cost of labor and whatever else. But yeah, I'm not saying to every business out there, go figure out your goal and go spend 10% of that, even if it's $50 million in a month. Don't then go spend 10% of that every month on advertising. But what we saw was that when that happened, a lot of times you could track that worked, because that overall number, forgetting about all the stuff in the middle, all the things that we'd like to know, all the metrics and data and leads and lead sources and all that, by every single one of them, it's still that overall number got to where they wanted it to be.
Yeah, and that's building off that even more. There is residual effects of advertising that even if you leave a station or a medium, there's a chance that in a month you could get a call from that station. And we've talked about, a 3-month rule where you have to let things run their course a little bit. But even going back to an ROI on your investment in good creative, an ROI on advertising in general. I mean, Norton Furniture in Cleveland is a legendary ad that went viral. That I think he still just runs overnights. And for those who don't know, if you go to YouTube and search Norton Furniture, you'll see the ad I'm referring to here. The ROI in a month or if your sales cycle is longer than a month, might not look good. So you need to have a hard look at how you're tracking your marketing success before you get into marketing, to be able to look at it effectively, and make the right decisions about it. If you're a physician who doesn't get paid until the insurance company puts everything through all things that insurance companies do, which if somebody could explain that to me, that'd be excellent. That could be 2 months down the road. So your July ROI could look terrible, but your September is going to look great because you canceled because you didn't see any return on investment. So
yeah, it's funny because and we've also worked with partners, and we do work with partners right now where that sales cycle is kind of weird. So, for instance, a doctor's office, somebody comes in for their first appointment today, and then they make a decision that they want to do something 2 weeks from now, and then it has to go through insurance, and next thing you know, by scheduling, it's not until September that they are able to actually do it, and the doctor's office doesn't actually collect any money until October. Like, when does that money go into the equation? Is it from the month where the lead happened, or is it from in the month where the money came in? And so every business has to kind of figure out how they want to account for all of that.
And Stephanie is my someone else who loves organization and spreadsheets as much as I do. I highly recommend to business owners, find a CRM or a POS system. Wow, I'm getting back into acronyms now, but find a system that will help you do this. There are CRM systems out there that are free. There's POS systems that have CRM functionality built into it. If you don't know, customer relationship management is CRM, POS, point of sale system. Have those types of systems in place that they're going to help with this reporting aspect. We talk about ROI, and if you have a service that reoccurs, like reoccurring revenue or attribution, all these things, having a system like that is going to make your life so much easier, because you don't have to have an Excel spreadsheet with 15 different tabs and formulas and macros and all this stuff, to be able to give you a true picture of it's something as simple as, well, how many leads from radio did I get this year? Which sounds like, oh, that should be simple. But if you're a business that isn't set up to track that, and all you have is a simple list that's written in, and for some businesses that works, to just have a tally mark at the checkout counter of everyone who's heard you on, XYZ radio station. It's a fine way to get started. But look into those different CRMs, POS systems that can help you with this, because in the long run, that is just as much an investment as the advertising and marketing is to your business.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steph.
Well, we've kind of centered this conversation around how much you're selling, if you're selling a product. And then you guys just talked a little bit about, a doctor and how that sales cycle might be longer. I want you to talk a little bit, Anthony, Todd, whichever one of you, about some companies need to be looking at what's the lifetime benefit of a new customer, because maybe the initial, even a doctor, the initial visit might be a very small copay or, a very small amount, but the lifetime value of that new customer is a whole different story. How does that factor in?
Yeah, and I'll try to be short and succinct, which I'm working on. But I think for some businesses, if they have a good idea of what the lifetime value of a customer is, I'll back up even a step further. Lifetime value of a customer usually applies to businesses that have reoccurring revenue. So if you have a service that comes out daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, you kind of fall into that category. But also, if you're a retail store, lifetime value of a customer, grocery stores got great at this, I would say around like 2004, 2005. Those customer loyalty cards aren't to save you money, it's to track you. And it's marketing genius, because now they know what you buy, when you buy it, how to market to you. But that's an example of a industry that was not good at tracking lifetime value of a customer, and put something in place to be able to do that. So it could be if you have a recurring revenue stream, or if you're retail, lifetime value of a customer. But that goes back to that CRM conversation. Having a system that helps track that for you. Everything that Anthony Taylor buys, which I hate talking about myself in the third person, falls under, his data record. And then we can tie that back to the original source that provided that lead. You can get even more advanced and say repeat, or not repeat, but referral business. If you're in the service industry, we know that one lead turns into one sale. That one sale turns into 3 referrals, because we have an awesome referral system built in. Now all of a sudden you're multiplying what your reoccurring revenue or lifetime value of a customer is. So for me, it comes back to being either having a good idea of what the lifetime value of a customer is. That on a monthly basis, it's $10. That on average, your customer is around for 12 months, $120, or having a system that helps you track that over the lifetime span of that customer.
Yeah, and what I was going to say right before Steph asked that question is something really important that I don't think that we've talked about, but if any of this makes any sense and makes you think anything out there, you're not doing this already. It really starts with one thing, and that first thing is ask. You have to ask. You can look at Google Analytics and metrics from call tracking and all that on your own, or have your consultant, your partner, your ad agency, whoever that is, do that for you and report back to you. But at your business level, whoever answers the phone, whoever greets a customer, whenever a sale is made, that you have to ask. And maybe you have to ask a little follow-up question, and you have to figure out what's your style and what are you okay doing. Like, some people don't want to bother customers too much, but there's always a way to figure out how to ask. I've heard people tell me, like, the way that I do it is I say, oh, my boss, he asks us to ask. I'm really sorry to bother you with this, and you kind of go with that one. Or you say, hey, we try not to, waste too much money on advertising so we can keep our prices good. It would really help if you could tell me where you heard about it, because then we will know what really works. And so there's ways to do it, but you got to ask, and then you got to keep track of it, whether it's a CRM, a POS, a spreadsheet. We've had partners that we work with who, I don't want to say resisted, but just who were not adopting because it was a change in their business. And I said, at the very least, put a piece of paper on the counter, and when the people at the counter ask, they could do hash marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, do something, anything. It will help you make decisions about what's working and what's not. It'll help your partner, whoever that might be, make decisions, make tweaks, make adjustments to campaigns. And then another thing, if you are the business owner, you're a manager, and you have other people who are going to be the people who are responsible for doing this, get them on board, get them to understand how important it is to you personally, to the business, to their opportunity to grow. And I'll make this one really quick, and I'm going to name names, but at Northeast Factory Direct, early on, when we started to work together, and there was advertising, and there hadn't been very much before that. There were times where I was in front of the entire sales team or the entire organization and talked about it. And one thing that they did was buy in, and they understood that it was going to be really important to ask these questions. And the more they grow, the more important it is for that message to be cascaded throughout the entire organization. But there were times I'd walk in for, a meeting, and some of the salespeople who had been there the very first time that I talked and said, "Hey, it's really important. We got to know this information. It'll only help you," would come in and tell me, "Hey, we've had a lot of people mentioning this, a lot of people mentioning that," and they were invested. They were totally down with the whole program. And if you can get that going in your organization, it's going to help you unbelievably.
Absolutely.
That was great.
So I anything else anybody wants to throw out there about creating measurable marketing, or want to start moving towards the actionable tip that we can throw out there for this week?
There you go. Using our own style.
Who's responsible for telling the actionable tip?
Well, he has to, since he's the one that brought it up.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that in pre-production.
I'll edit this.
Well, we had a lot. It's basically a recap, right?
Yeah.
Right. What from the conversation today, if there's one actionable piece, that somebody wants to, everyone will have their opportunity to go ahead and provide that, since we all have different perspectives and expertise here.
Yeah, awesome.
We'll start with you, Mike.
Yeah. And I'll come from not the creative side, but the radio side and those endorsements. I mean, being on the radio side and being on the ESPN Cleveland side, I mean, there's no names, but if Rizzo says a certain company's name, that their phone rings 7 times or 8 times like the minute he says it. So I mean, those endorsers, people love the people that they listen to, and radios where they feel like they really understand them and feel close to them.
Bradley, what do you got?
I don't want to copy off Mike, but I was going to go towards radio as well and say that everything you do on radio as a whole could lead to more, brand searches on Google, like how you were saying earlier. But also going back to how we've transitioned now into working from home, and that call tracking number, that if you have like a different number going on each station, and as Anthony was saying, 80% of people are actually going through this process right now. You could tell who's listening to what station just by the sheer number of calls that each number gets. And it's an inexpensive way to do it. It's a very concise and good way to realize where your leads are coming from.
All right. I'm going to geek out on the organization and the data management and collection piece of it. Like that is, yeah, right. And Anthony kind of hinted at it, but early stages, it might be an Excel spreadsheet, and that might be fine for you. And then as your company's growing or your investments in advertising are growing and there's more to keep track of, now's the time to invest in a CRM or something that's going to help you keep track of that. But all of the information in the world isn't going to do you any good if you're not putting it in some place where you can look at it and analyze it.
I love it. Yes. And that's, for me, the follow-up is don't get too reactionary with your data. If 1 month, one thing is down 2 percentage points, don't freak out. It's going to be really hard not to pull the plug. I understand that it's money and it's a business and you need to be profitable. But dig into it a little more. Try and look at it from different perspectives. What's going on in the world? What's going on with your business? Try not to be reactionary with this data. Everybody's data hungry right now. It's the world we live in. But don't be reactionary, because that's when you end up making poor decisions. Respond to things. Don't just react to them.
And it might not be what you're doing. It might just be how you're doing it, so you can make tweaks and adjustments to it.
Right. And then also you want to, whenever you're looking at data, it doesn't matter, if you're looking at stocks to invest in or, number of people that are buying bicycles now. You got to look at trends rather than blips in single days or single weeks, single months. Look at the trend.
All right. So a couple things. Figure out what it is that you're going to measure your return on investment by. What result do you need to have it be working for your business? And then make sure that you have your people on board, or that you're on board with this program, and ask and track it. Keep track of it, and then have strategies in place that are designed 100% to deliver what it is that you need. If you are trying to get X number of phone calls, because if you get that 50% of those will become appointments, and of those 25% will become sales, and it will equal this amount of money because your average sale is this, then don't put a sign in the concourse at a professional stadium, because that's not something that's designed to get you those phone calls, even if on it says your phone number on it. So I don't know. I think we covered a lot, and we gave a lot of things, but I think between what the five of us just said, do all of those things in one way or another, and you'll be on your way to tracking the success of advertising and marketing, and you'll have results and return on investment to look at and analyze and determine what you should do next, what you should change, what you should keep doing, what you should double down on. So
absolutely
great.
And just write us a thank you note for helping you know how to track your success.
Don't forget to hit the like button, so you're more likely to be successful.
There you go. All right, cool. Well, I think that was really great. A lot of times when we have a guest, or every time we have a guest, I ask a bunch of questions at the end to try to learn a little bit more about them. And instead of doing that and putting everybody on the spot with questions right now, I was going to say two things. First, Anthony mentioned earlier that he had to find a way to pay for a wedding, but when I say on public airwaves here, congratulations on your engagement to you and Mallory.
Thank you.
Yeah, very exciting. And then also Bradley, a little announcement here, will be leaving Mean Joe to take his talents west to California. And congratulations on getting a job out there in one of the greatest places in the world, one of my dad and mine's favorite place, Laguna Beach. Very excited for you. I know you'll be on with us for our next episode. Will be at least your last until we have you on as a financial digital strategist expert and guest sometime. So
I'm down.
Congratulations. We'll miss you, but we're happy for you.
Thank you.
Congrats.
So yeah, well, there you go.
All right.
Episode 12 in the books. I have like one very small sip left. So
Cheers.
Cheers.